Good afternoon. This is Richard Woolley, Weather Trends 360 Chief Meteorologist. Quick update for our farmer friends out there. Got a bit of an active pattern getting set up here as we go into the second half of June. We take a quick look here first at the tropical water temperatures. You'll note right here along the equator to the west of South America, we're starting to see some warming waters show up out here. This is typically where we look for the El Nino circulation to begin to develop. And we do see some warming of the waters out here south of Hawaii along the tropical Pacific. We also see some cool water right against the west coast of South America. That's kind of interesting. That may have some impact on the upcoming winter here in the eastern U.S. But the warming out here in the tropical Pacific south of Hawaii, that's pretty. Looks like we're on our way to at least a week, possibly moderate El Nino later this fall into the winter. The other things to really note right now, though, are the warm water temperatures to the west and south of Baja, Mexico. Really warm out here. We also have very warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico and along the east coast. The other thing, if you're interested in the east coast for hurricane season, we got a lot of cold water coming off Africa right now, all the way across the main development region for the Atlantic. So as the waves come off Africa this year, we don't expect to see a lot of large Atlantic storms develop way out here to the east and travel for days and weeks on time and then slam into the Caribbean. This year's storm development is going to be fairly weak out here, if anything. And then we have to watch it when they get in close. So as they hit this warm water in the Gulf of Mexico, that's when they can take off. Whereas they hit this warm water in the Bahamas and off the east coast, that's when these tropical systems could get a real kick to them. So the real threat this year is more in the Carolinas, southeast coast, and also the Gulf Coast. As we alluded to earlier, we got a lot of warm water off Mexico, the west coast of Mexico, south of Baja. We've already had two major hurricanes there this year. The first one kind of went out to sea, didn't do much. The second one is sitting just up north of the Baja tip in the Gulf of California here. This is moving northward. It's going to move toward the four corners of the U.S., unusual direction. However, it's also going to bring quite a bit of moisture with it. It's down to a tropical storm now, or actually I believe it's depression. It's gone even weaker in the last 12 hours. But this is going to bring a lot of moisture up into places like Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming. At the same time, we have a weak system moving in off the Pacific. So the two are going to collide right here over the Rockies, producing an awful lot of rainfall, much cooler temperatures out here because of all the cloud cover and rain. And that's actually really welcome. There's a big wildfire burning in Durango, Colorado. This rainfall may actually put it right out completely. The other things to note is, what's going to happen to all that moisture that's starting to build up down here. And also keep a look at this moisture here in the Gulf of Mexico associated with the warm waters in the Gulf. All of this is coming together across the southern plains, and the wind flow this time of year is from south to north. So we kind of have an idea where this is going. So let's take a look at the overall rainfall pattern over the next 2 weeks. We start to see that tropical moisture, even today, starting to get up into the southwest. Got a little bit down here in Texas, not too much. Kind of a weak cold front moving across the northern Rockies today, spurring off a few thunderstorms in the mountains, but nothing big. But as we progress this through the weekend, look at this big surge show up out here in the southwest, up into the Rockies. That continues on into Sunday, Monday. The other thing I want to point out here is remember that front I was talking about, that's now progressed over here into the, let's say from the western Great Lakes back into the central Rockies. And all that's doing is helping focus all this moisture and curve it off to the east, right across the grain belts of America. So this is great news. We're going to get some good rainfall out here. And then as these fronts this time of year move across the Great Lakes and down into the east, they don't tend to penetrate all the way to the Gulf Coast. They kind of stall out somewhere in the Ohio Valley, maybe down into the Tennessee Valley, but that's about as far south as they can get this year before they die out. However, they act as great focuses for moisture. So as the moisture comes north, hits the front squeezes it out, and you get rainfall out of it. So this is the first day on Sunday of the rainfall getting pushed out across the plains. We see on Monday the front's really kind of laying it across the Great Lakes. It's kind of pushed down across the northern plains. A nice day in Bismarck. But to the south along the frontal boundary, lots of rain showers and thunderstorms, kind of tying back to that moisture from the original storm that was way down here off of Baja. We got lots of moisture streaming across and streaming along the front, so nice welcome rainfalls that we'll see here. Notice what's happening in Texas. We got that moisture coming in off the Gulf. It's getting wetter and wetter. And then you basically see the front now has moved into the Ohio Valley here. It's kind of stalling out as we go into the middle of next week. It does continue to try and push southward, but it's not a real big push at this point. By Thursday, we got more moisture pooling up here in the southern plains, southern Rockies. We're just waiting on the next front to come across southern Canada and push into the Great Lakes and Northeast. And we kind of see that as we head toward the end of the week. The next front is probably sitting right up in here somewhere across the northern plains, western lakes. That pushes forward. Again, you get the firing of moisture and showers along the frontal boundary, and as time wears along, that boundary then lifts back northward, and you get more showers. So it's in and out of rain showers. To the south of that boundary, it's pretty warm. So down here in Oklahoma, Little Rock, southern Missouri, it's getting pretty warm down here. Not too warm, but pretty hot. But as you can see, toward the end, beginning of the last week of June, we do have another front has pushed through the Great Lakes and Northeast. Another nice day up here. After a few days of rain, it's going to blow out and be nice and low humidity and comfortable sunny skies. But again, all the moisture and humidity to the south here, and this will all work its way back northward again, as it typically does this time of year. By Wednesday, you see it kind of progressing back into Chicago, back into Minneapolis. By Thursday, you see it surging northward throughout the lakes. There are some indications as we get to the end of June that this big dry pocket out here that starts to develop in the west, we kind of disconnect the tropical moisture with our weather patterns, so things start to dry out here. This time of year, when things dry out and the sun can shine in the southwest and up into the high plains, it starts to get pretty hot. So we're going to have to watch out for some building heat out here in the Rockies and particularly the western plains, where we could see some temperatures starting to push the century mark, going up in here into western Kansas, Oklahoma, and West Texas. So again, some hot weather coming. This is actually not a bad scenario. We get lots of rain, or on and off rain for the next 2 weeks. Not raining all the time, which is good. Just needed rainfall when we need it. It's going to work out well. Followed by some heat and humidity as we go into early July. That should really get things just growing along very nicely, without too much threat of extra disease from being excessively wet or too dry. We look to be in pretty good shape. So overall, right now, not a lot of threats to talk about to the crop in the West, or in the Midwest, I should say. From the eastern Corn Belt to the western Corn Belt, things look pretty good right now. As we get later into July, we do expect it to dry out somewhat here in the northern or in the central plains, and possibly up into Iowa and southern Minnesota. But by then, most of the canopy in the corn is pretty tall by this point. The canopy's filled in, shading the soil. So while it can get warm out there, it may not be so bad to actually have some drier weather start to arrive by then. So again, overall the pattern looks pretty on and off wet for the next 2 weeks. Potential here for some heat to really build in here as we get toward the end of the month. We do have some heat right now across the Ohio Valley into the northeast. That's going to last a couple days into early next week and then get shunted out of here as all this rainfall and cloud cover cools us back down. That's about all I got to say right now. Appreciate you joining us. We'll touch base with you again. Thanks.